What is the most appalling behavior you've seen from a guest at a wedding? I was at a wedding where the bride's best friend and maid of honor stood up to give a toast and tell a story about the bride. She then proceeded to tell a story about the two of them going on a road trip, picking up some dude with a foot fetish and taking turns effing him in a seedy motel. I was laughing my butt off because I didn't really know these people. They were my husband's friends, but the faces of everyone else were just blank or very angry. The groom's dad had even made this entire video presentation of his son growing up, and it was all weepy. Then he hears about his new daughter-in-law double-teaming a hobo. Yikes. Good times. Next story. The bride had a best man, her best friend from college. In his speech, he told the story of how she took his virginity and how he loved her oh so much. Then he started crying. Nobody could kick his butt because he was in a wheelchair. The father of the groom later loaded him into an accessible taxi and told him to get lost. Next story. Have to. Not really a guest exactly, but during my stepsister's wedding, some people crashed the wedding and stole her wedding cake. This was around the time that Wedding Crashers came out, and we were warned that they've had an influx of people just showing up to weddings, uninvited, trying to mimic the movie. They convinced us to hire some light security, but it did not help. The people were a bunch of drunk college kids. They snuck in, went in there back by the cake, took the whole thing around back outside and ate just a small part of it with their hands, and then started throwing the rest around. We noticed when, during the middle of the wedding ceremony, they tossed the last half of the entire cake into a bonfire. I was pretty young back then, so I can't remember the exact details, but the people got their butts kicked, expelled from college, and sued by multiple people and arrested. And one of them even got in some serious trouble for some drugs they were carrying. 2. My best friend of 20 years was getting married. I loved both of them. The friend was like a brother to me. I'd actually known him longer than my other two blood siblings. The bride was a good friend of mine and perfect for him. I honestly think I was more happy that they were getting married than they were. Anyways, wedding was a disaster. Their families were both horrid. I had known this beforehand, but didn't expect it to manifest this way on their dang wedding day. Literally, every horrible thing their families could do was done. They did ridiculous amounts of damage to the venue, had multiple people randomly hooking up in the bathrooms while their dates were in other rooms. The groom's brother was trying to offer people intimate relations with his girlfriend for a little money for drugs. The bride's father actually accepted this deal, but for some different heavier stuff, and someone puked all over half the food after drinking themselves half to death. Someone started opening gifts and taking some while the couple was busy cleaning up other messes, and I, the best man, missed the majority of it because of a family emergency, which turned out to be nothing. Also, by the end of it, a brawl was starting between the two families. I was there for the end, though, where the bride and groom stood in front of everyone and told them that they were going to be moving somewhere very far from Louisiana, and all of them, either to the northeast or northwest corner of the country, that they never wanted to see the majority of them again, and if they decided to remain in contact with one or two people there, then they would mail them their new numbers. They were serious. Their things were packed up and gone the next day, and all the numbers canceled. I never even got their new number. Found out about a year later that they're living in Brazil now. Tried to get in contact, but got nothing in response. Next story. I used to work for a wedding planner, and one time a guest stole the bride's dress. The bride had changed into a short, more comfortable dress for her grand exit. Her other dress was cumbersome and poofy, and on the security cameras in the venue, you could see the guest run into the bathroom while everyone watched the couple leave and take the thousands of dollars dress out the back door. She denied it until we threatened to press charges and then claimed, "I was going to wash it for the bride." Next story. I worked in weddings for a long time, so I got to see a lot of appalling people over the course of my career. My favorites include a lady that got so drunk she thought she was a dog and crawled around outside barking. Our wedding had kids that caused $10,000 worth of damage to the property, doing things like clogging the plumbing with rocks and breaking tiles out of the antique fountains. Another wedding that had too many children had to be shut down because kids were breaking into cars with butter knives, and killing some of the animals on the property and ripped out wiring for the speaker system. A New Year's Eve wedding had guests that were locking themselves in closets and doing all sorts of illicit drugs. That one ended in a food fight. One wedding broke out into a brawl, and we had to call the police to shut that one down. One wedding, the groom was so trashed, he hooked up with a bridesmaid and the bride walked out in the middle of the wedding. So, there are a fun few stories. For the most part, many weddings went on without a hitch. Next story. My friend got married 2 years ago, and the bride's father was an absolute douche. He never liked his daughter's fiancé, even though he's a great guy. For her bachelorette party, her and a bunch of friends went to Las Vegas. Her parents came along too. They would hang out a lot during the day and leave them alone to party at night. Apparently, her parents tried to talk her into not marrying him the whole trip. I was in the bridal party, and the dad was a grumpy jerk the whole time. I honestly wanted to pull him aside and tell him don't be such an a-hole, but decided that would just make things worse. There was just no reasoning with this grumpy turd of a human. The wedding day goes off without a hitch, except for the dad being a Debbie Downer the whole time. During the after party, I'm walking out of the bathroom and happen to be walking behind my friend and his now father-in-law. My friend puts his arm around his father-in-law, smiles at him and asks, "Does this mean I can call you dad now?" In a half-joking sort of way. He doesn't even look at him, lets out a stern "no," and walks away in the other direction. He then proceeded to cut people off from drinking who weren't even drunk yet, yells at me when I was trying to get a couple of drinks from the bar, and then shuts down the bar and kicks everyone out early. You know it's a great wedding when everyone is standing outside, waiting for cabs, talking about how much of an a-hole the father-in-law is. Next story. I didn't see it, but my little sister's been to a lot of weddings and obliviously related a story where she was the culprit. She bragged that all of the weddings she'd been to, she'd caught all the bouquets. She paused and added, "I had to fight the last female dog for it, but I got it." I asked around a little bit and found out that she had literally bullied all of her friends into being their bridesmaid at each of their weddings, and while she'd legitimately caught one or two, she caught the others because she'd threatened the competition who had all just backed off at a toss, had thrown several girls to the ground who hadn't been cowed, and in the last incident had straight up assaulted the poor girl who had caught it and ripped it out of her hands. She had no clue this was inappropriate behavior, and yet no one's put a ring on it yet. Step right up, gentlemen, we've got a fierce competitor. Next story. Sister A plans an expensive wedding which Sister B hijacks by rescheduling the bachelorette party and including only the people she wants. Doesn't tell the bride, who is excluded until the following day. Goes on a crash diet and has her bridesmaid gown tailored to fit so tight she is a distraction during the ceremony. Diverts the wedding photographer and convinces him to take glam shots and family portraits of her and Sister C and their husbands and children. The bride discovers this when, weeks later, she ends up paying for all of those extra shots. The idiot stole the party, stole the spotlight, and stole the pictures. Next story. I went along to my friend's brother's wedding to fill up an extra seat because their other brother's wife was sick and couldn't make it. The brother, whose wife I was standing in for, got incredibly drunk, flirted shamelessly with me, followed me around, told me he regretted marrying his wife, and chicken blocked me, or whatever the female equivalent is, every time I got talking to another male guest. One of the other guests actually asked me how long we had been married, thinking I was his wife. It was so embarrassing. Not been to a wedding with a fight yet, though, which is surprising considering half of my family is Irish. Next story. When my dad got married for the third time, my stepmom basically revealed that she cares about my two half-sisters, Dad's first marriage, a great deal more than me. Even worse was when the rest of the wedding party all subtly agreed they hate my mom, Dad's second wife. Nothing worse than a room full of people hating on your mother in front of you. My mother is honestly one of the kindest, most caring people I know. No one outside of a small group of people from my dad's new family would feel so negatively about her. Next story. Went to a pretty formal wedding last year in a beautiful old Catholic church where the mother of the bride spent the entire processional screeching at the photographer because he wasn't doing his job right, according to her. This included when her daughter was walking down the aisle. She kept up this behavior all throughout the reception too. Think Jersey Housewives, and that's pretty much what it sounded like. One of their cousin's girlfriends got so drunk she was pretty much laid out front of the reception hall with her dress around her butt. This was in October, up north, so it was pretty cold. The cousin refused to acknowledge her and said to leave her outside. So the bride spent half an hour outside with her before I had to go in and tell the cousin to grow the F up and deal with his girlfriend because she was his problem. And at the same wedding, the best friends of the bride and groom got engaged. He had asked if it was okay if he proposed, and of course the bride was too nice to say no. He at least held off until the reception was over and we were all drunk and partying in a hotel room. The girl said yes, so I guess she was okay with it. That was pretty much an all-around trash-tastic night. I've never really understood the idea of proposing on someone else's wedding day unless you're trying to steal attention. It kind of feels like the least romantic scenario possible. The whole venue, the whole day, the whole event is all about these completely different people. Instead of planning your own special occasion or date night, you're just like, well, look, they're kings and queens, princesses galore. What if we get together too? But I could very well be wrong. If we have anyone who's been proposed to at a wedding, let us know down below. Did it feel romantic? Did you feel special? Next story. Coke is always entertaining at weddings. I've been to 4 where either the bride, groom, or both were either in the toilets, taking it up the nose, or taking care of the crabs. The worst wedding I've been to was when the groom passed out between the wedding dinner and evening reception and had to be carried to his room. He then reappeared at about 2 a.m., covered in puke, when most people had left or were leaving. And he went berserk on those that were still saying they were ungrateful for going home and started throwing glasses, etc., going on about how much money he'd spent on this wedding. And by the way, her parents paid for all of it, apart from the cake. The bride ended up going home with her parents that night, while the groom spent the night trying to punch his way through the walls in his honeymoon suite, with 3 different maids trying to calm him down. They were divorced less than 18 months later, and it turned out he was the father of a kid with someone else we know, who was also at the wedding with the kid. Surprisingly, these were all what you would consider classy people with high-paying jobs and good careers. Who had no problem spending 30+ grand on a wedding that they wouldn't even remember. Next story. I catered a wedding at a restaurant I used to work at. The climax of the evening was when the bride literally cleared the entire buffet tables, then tipped them over while screaming, "The effing meatballs are cold!" The meatballs were on the floor, steaming, so they really couldn't have been that cold. She just thought she could be Bridezilla because she paid the dues for the room. The restaurant owner walked up to the microphone and told everyone, including the bride, that they were to leave immediately. Still in a rage, the bride approaches the manager, who still has the microphone in his hand, and tells him that if he does that, then she wants a refund. The owner purposefully speaks into the microphone that he will call the police on anyone in the bridal party who is still on the property in the next hour, and he will be using the money that he was paid to clean up the mess the bride just made. The bride ended up willingly walking out of the restaurant with her party all sobbing because the meatballs were oh so cold. Watching the whole thing go down made me feel like I was on a movie set. Next story. I worked a wedding recently where a groom's father was trying to give his speech but got emotional, and it ended in the bride and groom coming over to give him hugs. It was very sweet. Later in the evening, the mother of the groom walks up to me and tells me that the husband wanted a chance to finish his speech. I confirmed with the father, who said he would love a chance to finish his speech. Everything was planned for him to go right before the dancing started after everyone finished their coffee and cake. So the MC gets up, does his last little speech, and says the father of the groom was going to get up to finish his speech. This was apparently a complete lie, as the mother burst into the room with her ballroom dance partner, dragging him by the tie to some Tina Turner song, and started doing the most inappropriate dance I've ever seen in the middle of the dance floor. I felt sick. The bride looked like she was going to cry, so I ran over to the DJ and told him he needed to fade the song out quick, started clapping really loudly. Everyone joined in, and then the DJ just threw some different music on, and everyone came out to start dancing. Turns out the groom's mother had been incredibly controlling throughout the wedding process, but I had never met her, and nobody had warned me about her. Next story. My uncle, that was doubling as the photographer, fell through a wall because he was so drunk. He also loaded all of his film wrong and 0 pictures came out. 15 years later, one of my cousins was getting married. My aunt got into a fight and threw drinks back and forth with a bridesmaid. A cousin got in a fight with the bartender, cops got called, and the bride got the microphone and kicked our side of the family out. Weddings are awesome. Next story. I've always wanted to post this story on Reddit, so I'm taking this opportunity. A friend of mine, we'll call him Freddie, was at his cousin's wedding while he was in high school and proceeded to get very, oh so very, drunk. Throughout the night, Freddie took to dancing with a fair share of ladies, but another cousin's girlfriend took an exceptional liking to him. Eventually, they started to get real down and dirty, hardcore making out and a little bit of grinding in the middle of the dance floor. Might I add that usually Freddie is a companion of other men, so obviously his cousin is infuriated that his girlfriend is cheating on him in front of his entire family with his gay, much younger cousin, and tries to get the girlfriend out of there. My friend's grandmother pulls Freddie aside and tells him to go get some air, sober up. This venue was set up so that the back wall of the ballroom was made entirely of glass with a door to the patio. So, Grandma takes Freddie outside, props him up, and heads back in to calm down his irate cousin. Somehow, amidst these shenanigans, the girlfriend sneaks outside and proceeds to have some taste of Freddie and full view of his family. Freddie comes to the next morning of the ballroom floor of his grandma's hotel room having 0 recollection. He wanted to know why no one was speaking to him at breakfast. Next story. I used to DJ for weddings. The first wedding I did, the mother of the bride showed up in tiny cutoff shorts and a tiny tank top that was so skin tight I swear you could see the ripples in her breast implants. She made sure to still be dressed like that as the guests arrived. When she finally put on her gown for the wedding, it was a low-cut halter top and super bright gold. You could see her from miles away. After the ceremony and picture, she went right back to her barely there outfit. The groom was beside himself. He told me not to play a single song she requested, so she wouldn't dirty dance. But she did it anyway, to every song. It was sickening how hard she worked to make every single thing about her that day. Next story. Went to a Western-style wedding with all Chinese guests. Bride and groom, my friends, were all Chinese. 60% of the guests show up late and miss the ceremony. Proceed to drink the free bar and eat the dinner, but then I see several tables packing up food in doggy bags to take home. Is this a cultural thing? I don't really know. Most of the guests were gone by 8:30 p.m. Dinner started at 7, and they had the venue until 2 a.m. We couldn't believe it. Tacky was an understatement. Next story. When I was dating my now husband, we had a weekend date planned. He texts me and asks me if I want to attend a wedding with him. Sure, I reply, not realizing it was that same day. He just now remembered. Yikes, okay. Well, we cancel our existing date plans and I throw together a suitable cocktail attire dress and go to his house to meet up for the drive to the venue. He's wearing green baggy cords, red and white striped Adidas sneakers, and a vest that he last wore for Halloween as part of a costume. Judging from the invite and the venue, I realize this isn't a super casual event, and I find something else for him to wear. Phew. But then his brother decides he and his new girlfriend also want to go, so they get dressed and we're all on our way. Turns out we're about 40 minutes late, walked right into the aisle to get our seats in front of the bridal. Yikes! Then it gets worse. At the reception, we are looking for our assigned seating and I can't find it. Oh, turns out my guy never RSVP'd. I am dying inside from all the cringe. The mother of the bride says it will be just a few minutes so they can set up some extra seating for us. So I try to fill that awkward time by walking my significant other over to the guest book, the gift table, ask him to fill out the guest book and leave a gift. What gift? Oh my gosh, he didn't bring anything. Ugh! We are seated. Overhear his brother making conversation with our table members. Some really nice people. They talk a little business small talk, and then he is asked what he does, what his girlfriend does, etc. Mind you, his younger brother is 30 years old. Turns out his new girlfriend is a sophomore in high school. Oh geez. The table looks at us with well-deserved side-eye. So it turns out my SO had zero idea of wedding etiquette, never RSVP'd, didn't get a gift, and his brother wasn't even invited, let alone his teenage +1. I pretty much wanted to disappear and questioned my entire relationship. We ended up being awful wedding crashers, and I'm still embarrassed about it. However, since then we've attended 6 weddings together, and now my husband is well versed in wedding etiquette. We always RSVP, arrive in a very timely manner, don't bring uninvited guests, and do bring a thoughtful and generous gift. Next story. At my cousin's wedding, after the party had finished, a friend of the groom got so drunk that he took a crap in the hallway of the hotel the reception was being held at. He then proceeded to try to clean it up with a towel from his room and managed to make it worse by smearing it all over the walls. He was then found by management and dropped off at the best man's hotel room, where he promptly climbed into bed, still covered in crap, and passed out. It was not funny at the time, but hilarious in retrospect. Next story. I used to be a hotel barman in the UK. You get some good insights into the human condition. The main thing I learned was that higher class families, i.e. the more expensive hotels, are really no better or less ridiculous than their poorer equivalents, but they seem to have more at stake when it all goes wrong. I remember one delightful occasion, this is at the lower end of the social spectrum, to put it disgracefully, when the families of the bride and groom were clearly distrustful of each other and barely on speaking terms from the outset. I rather admired the father of the bride, who went to some trouble to act the diplomat and make friends with the other side. For all the good it did them, at least he tried. Anyway, with crushing inevitability, a fight finally broke out about 11 p.m. No security, naturally, so me and another barman had to break it up. I got covered in blood, someone else's, in the process. I think someone lost a tooth, as there were only 2 of us staff at the stage refereeing the pantomime. I didn't really care. I've never seen a ballroom full of people go tribal that quickly. The catcalling, the jeering, the screeching. In a few seconds, I got to see quite a lot of brave souls, particularly the women, goading others on to violence. Because they had a late bar in a pretty thirsty town, we spent quite a lot of the night chucking the local scallies out. It didn't help that some of the wedding guests got sufficiently drunk to start inviting them back in. This led, of course, to another fight. There were a fair few. I probably didn't even see all of them. The highlight for me was after we locked the doors, one of the locals smashed a window, entered through it, then stood at the bar demanding to be served as a friend of one of the families. Admirable in its way, as was the fact that the other family picked him up and slung him out for us. I don't work in hotels anymore. Edit, for anyone wondering if the police were called, no, because the licensing arrangements were a little unconventional. The hotel management didn't like to trouble the authorities. If this sounds like it's effing asking for trouble, well, it is. We had to rush a girl to hospital once in the manager's car because he refused to call an ambulance. Next story. A rather promiscuous friend of the groom showed up in a really short skirt at the wedding. Everyone was staring at her, obviously, and she seemed to enjoy the attention. The bride was very mad since this girl was trying to steal her thunder. Later, at the wedding party, my drunk, middle-aged uncle created a small spectacle by putting his hand under her skirt and grabbing her butt. Many felt that teach her a lesson. 99 out of 100 guests were very appalled. All in all, one of the better weddings we've seen in my family. Next story. These all make mine sound so lame. Even so, okay, I was the personal butler for the bride and groom while catering a wedding in Memphis. I fixed their plates and arranged them nicely in their private suites so they could have their first meal together. They were running late, so I went to check the freshness of their food. Someone had eaten half of everything. I don't even know who found it. It was a secluded room downstairs from the party. At the same wedding, guests complained that there wasn't enough food. We bring what you pay for, by the way, so they left, got takeout. We had to clean up to-go boxes all night. Next story. My uncle married his wife 4 months ago. They had their reception at a local bar that also had a room for things like receptions and meetings. The bar was separated from the reception room, but anyone could pass between rooms. The bride's mother had been divorced for some years, and her ex-husband is known as the town drunk. The reception had been going on for a few hours when the bride's former stepdad came through the doors from the bar. He was clearly drunk and confused as to why he wasn't invited. He began singing karaoke with a few of the bridesmaids and started to hug them all. We had to ask him to leave, because at this point he became irritable with the women for not being naked enough. He was trying to hug me and some of the other groomsmen and even groped my grandfather. We decided to escort him out of the building and called him a cab. By far the most appalling thing I've seen at a wedding. Next story. These words were actually spoken by two female relatives at my niece Rosie's wedding. "What is up with Rosie? She's acting like this wedding is all about her." For the record, Rosie was not being a bridezilla. Just asked if she could store the wedding dress briefly in our room until her suite was ready. Next story. Work for a catering location. The other day went to collect my tips at the end of the night and my boss's office was locked. He went back to open it. Lo and behold, there was a couple effing on his desk. They just kinda looked up for a moment and then resumed said boning. After we got them out, found a nice butt-shaped smudge on his glass desktop. Classy, folks. Next story. Ooh, I work at a wedding venue. Mostly it's people just puking or being stupid or sloppy making out, but I tell you this much. This summer, during the reception, the groom stepped outside to smoke a cigar, and out of nowhere comes a lady screaming, "He was in my bed last night!" while swinging a bat. She had to be tackled and arrested, and the bride was at least 7 months pregnant. Next story. I was once at a friend's wedding. She, my friend, was all for it, and his family were not at all ready. The poor groom just had a shell-shocked look on his face, and his day was probably made worse by the fact that his uncle, who had some gang connections, whipped out a shotgun, pumped one shot off into the air before making his toast, and later tried to stab the best man, the groom's brother. Next story. At one of my cousin's weddings, as my other 18-year-old female cousin took ecstasy and tried to seduce the bridesmaids in the middle of the dance floor. She then started jumping up and hanging from the low rafters and tried to wrap her legs around any bridesmaid that would come close to her. Her mother then drug her out of the wedding and drove her back to the hotel. She got about halfway there, and my cousin jumped out of the moving car and ran and hid in the woods. It took about half an hour to find her. The wedding was in a different state, and the rest of the time spent there was an intervention for her. Apparently she was on some heavy drugs. Yay, family. Next story. I used to work catering, and one memorable time, this maybe 90-pound Filipino bride decided to drink approximately her body weight in vodka during the reception. Maybe it was nerves. Nobody ever found out why. What we did find was her puking her guts out in one of the bathrooms, laid out on the floor in her wedding dress, about at the time the guests were seated for the dinner. The groom was so upset that he and his groomsmen ate dinner in a separate room. They did end up making it to the cake cutting, while he literally held her up, her body totally limp, and held her hand around the knife just to cut the cake. I wonder how long that marriage lasted. Next story. My aunt's second husband at my wedding. He threw his dinner in the trash because it wasn't steak. He insulted the cake, which I made myself, to my husband because it looked like a tree, which was kind of the entire point. He very openly brought in his own booze because what we bought was crap, which put at risk the small family-owned venue that we used had a liquor inspector showed up, and he very openly and drunkenly hit on all 4 of our 20-something woman friends in front of my aunt. Needless to say, he's never been particularly liked by my family. Thankfully, they live in a different province, and it's only a 50-50 chance he'll fly out with my aunt to family events. Next story. Didn't witness this one, but it's too good not to share. My best friend went to her cousin's wedding. Everything went okay until the reception when my friend was sitting in the bar of the hotel with her brothers and their mom ran in shouting, "Your nan's got your Annie Marine in a headlock!" and then ran back out again. They followed her into the main reception room to find a full-on fight going, which appears to have been started by my friend's nan getting drunk and reopening some old wounds. It ended with the cousin in tears, her foot on her father's throat as he lay on the floor, screaming at her family to get out, that she never wanted to see them again because they ruined her wedding. Apparently the groom's family, who had all flown over from Ireland, were completely shell-shocked. Next story. My older brother's wedding. His mother-in-law is a gosh dang monster. She never liked him, and a lot of it was because of our heritage. She prided herself on having a pure Irish pedigree, and wanted only her daughter to continue the legacy. My family is Polish. No big deal. All throughout the relationship, pre-engagement, marriage, she'd say, "You can't be with him. Let's find you a good, strong, successful man who's Irish like us. He's communist. He might end up being a plumber if he doesn't end up in prison first. Despite my brother being a very successful accountant, Anna, his significant other, thought it was ridiculous, and they kept dating, they got engaged, and finally, it's their wedding day. His father-in-law? Fine, he's cool as F. He couldn't care less if his daughter was marrying a purple giraffe as long as she was happy. I really think he thought his wife was just going a little crazy because her only child was getting married. His wife is another story. She's walking around being an absolute female dog to everyone and vehemently refusing to talk to anyone in my family. She wore a t-shirt and jeans up until about 30 minutes before the wedding because Anna's going to sprout a brain and decide she doesn't want to be with him any second. We might as well not even dress up because we'll be going straight home. She also threw a fit when she found out that an Orthodox priest would be doing the ceremony. Now, I'm not religious personally, but a good portion of my family are of Eastern Orthodoxy faith. Anyway, long story short, the ceremony goes over successfully. I was a groomsman, so I was busy taking lots of pictures with the wedding party. The mother-in-law refuses to take pictures. She's walking around trying to mess things up. She's extremely drunk, telling people that there is a second reception in the county jail, and telling everyone else we only have 20 minutes left of rental time here, so you guys need to leave, even though they had well over 2 hours left. My brother's father-in-law was so appalled and embarrassed by her behavior that day that they were separated for almost a year and were on the verge of divorce. I could type for hours about that wedding, but that's kind of the overview of it. Sorry about the accent, guys. You know what? Irish just seems to escape me. I can't get a good grasp on it. Next story. I was bartending an outdoor wedding a few years back, and gorgeously decorated event under a monster tent. Towards the end of the night, the music was playing. Most people were on the dance floor. It was the time of night when everyone is drunk, and you hope people are done coming up to you because you actually do not want to serve them anymore. The DJ throws Kung Fu fighting into the set. I look out to see this short, sweaty drunk weirdo start Kung Fu kicking the main pole, holding up this monster tent, kicking it to the beat. Just kicking, karate chopping, hard. The lights actually started to flicker, and the tent, along with the lanterns and decorations, would jump with every hit. Nobody did a thing. I froze because I thought I would get blamed for getting him that drunk, but everyone just stared at him. A few people actually turned back around and went about their business as if it was normal. The older people, not on the dance floor, started looking up and talking amongst themselves. Then it happened. He started headbutting the pole. Every smack let out a thud you could actually hear between the beats. Head hits massive pole. Pole shakes, lights flicker, entire tent sways. Then he stopped. He went and sat down. Nobody batted a freaking eye. Now, I'm not sure what behavior was more appalling, to be honest. The guy could have crashed an entire wedding tent on the guests, or everyone else around him that let it happen. I was lost for words. I have seen things such as moms give their 12-year-olds a mixed drink, bikers show up in tank tops and chaps, a woman change a diaper in the middle of a table. But this was so strange. Next story. I work as an event manager, so I usually watch over weddings as well. One wedding, the cake people dropped the ball. They brought a big birthday cake with a clown on it. When we told them they messed up, they realized the other cake was the one on the other side of town. So in order to save what we can, they brought in a cream cake that was blank to place on top of the clown. Then they had to top it with a bride and groom, but did not have said topper. Instead, they bought a Ken and Barbie doll and slapped it on top. I decided to tell the bride and groom we'll place it on a rolling table, have him roll it out, cut the cake at a certain angle so people can't see this atrocity, and have my team cut it in the back. They were in good spirits about it and even jokingly told each other happy birthday as they cut the cake. They turned it into an inside joke, and no one was the wiser. Next story. My mother. She went completely off the deep end at my wedding, booing my wife and I. She destroyed her bouquet and said we gave her a lesser one, crashed the bridal party's spa appointment to get hair and makeup done, and when we were announced at the reception, she booed. She destroyed favors. She told my uncle, whose wife of 40 years had just passed away, that she's burning in hell, and all sorts of other things. A lot of this I found out after the fact, and half my wife's and my family spent the entire day running interference on her, so we didn't get the worst of it. Bar none, she acted like the lowest of the low, something slightly above that first amphibian crawling out of the primordial ooze and calling itself a land dweller. If there was anything she could do that was destructive, she did it. The last thing she said to me was, "I hope your plane crashes as we left the next morning for our flights to Australia. I haven't spoken to her much since, and not at all in the last 10 years. I'm sure my life is better off for it. Yikes. Next story. Accompanying my girlfriend to her friend's wedding. She goes off to mingle and tells me to put the gift on the table with the others. Few minutes go by with me standing at the bar, bored. She, quick, get the present, we're leaving. Me, what the frick? She, wrong wedding, hotel next door. By now the wedding gifts had been moved to a more central table and piled high, and that's why I had to dig through a table of wedding gifts to retrieve one before heading out the door with it. Not loving the glances that I got there. Next story. My uncle is one of 14 kids. All of them grew up to be completely nuts. Family weddings became less about preventing the chaos than just attempting to control it. When my cousin got married, his aunt came to the wedding dress in a 1920s-looking flapper dress with peacock feathers in her hair. Okay, crazy, but nothing terrible. Until she went missing during the middle of the wedding. She walked in 30 minutes later in a long I Heart New York t-shirt, bikini bottoms, and nothing else. She decided to go swimming in the pool at the hotel where the wedding was, that she wasn't even staying at in the middle of the wedding. She proceeded to start flashing people until my uncle tackled her. Serious Randy Quaid in Vegas vacation crap. Next story. I was at my cousin's wedding 3 years ago. They rented a beautiful mansion and everyone seemed to be having a great time. There were 3 floors, but the wedding was mostly taking place on the upper 2 floors. On the bottom floor, there were some bathrooms, some side rooms, and a bar where the alcohol was stored. Late in the evening, we were running low on drinks, so one of the guests went down to get some more. Suddenly, we heard a lot of screaming, and almost everyone tried to get downstairs. Well, when the guy got downstairs and went into the bar, he found his wife having relations with another man who was also married. Yelling, screaming, fighting, lots of alcohol bottles being thrown, it was impossible to break up. This would have been bad enough to top it off, but both married couples' kids were attending as well and made it downstairs to see all of their naked parents fighting in puddles of alcohol. Needless to say, this ended my cousin's wedding, as well as 2 other marriages, in epic fashion. Next story. My mother-in-law showed up wasted at 10 a.m. in the morning to the venue, took pictures of me topless before I put on my dress, fell on my dress, and kept saying, "Heart you," so she didn't have to say "I love you" to me since I was stealing her son away from her. The night before, she filed for divorce to my husband's stepfather. Biological isn't in the picture. And at the reception, she went up to every one of the members of that side of the family to say, "You don't effing belong here," and we haven't spoken to her since. Next story. I went to my cousin's wedding and the groom's alcoholic sister got plastered, tried hooking up with me and her own brother. Then the groom's best man was making the moves on the bride. The groom ended up kicking both out of the wedding. It was quite strange because we ended up finding out the best man's toast was going to end in his confessing of the love for the bride. Next story. I didn't see it at the wedding, but after. My bestie had disposable cameras at each of the tables to catch candids. I was in charge of collecting them and having the pictures developed. 2 of the 20 or so cameras were filled with nothing but upskirt shots and wang pics, like all different ones. I have no idea who the culprits were, nor how they managed it. Note to guys, upskirts at the weddings are futile. Spanks everywhere. Next story. My significant other is a professional musician who's played a lot of weddings. I just asked him this question, and he says it's usually the high-end/celebrity weddings that seem to have the worst behavior. The worst he personally witnessed was at a well-known country singer's wedding. The bride had an uncle who became extremely intoxicated and was hitting on all the young females there. Towards the end of the night, there was a commotion as one of the bridesmaids ran out of the ladies' room, which was just off the reception ballroom. The uncle was inside the stall, self-pleasing himself, and opened the stall door as she was using the mirror, showing himself off. Just as the security guy was about to run into the bathroom, he hobbled out, pants around his ankles with a full blower, throwing his hands up in a "what?" kind of symbol, as close to 300 guests turned, looked in horror. The bride was in tears. The reception was halted almost an hour early because of it. He has a few other good ones, but says that was by far the most memorable. Good ol' Uncle Rick. Oh my gosh. Seems like the family members are always causing the most trouble. It's never just the random invited guest who's destroying everything. Guys, be careful. Well, not necessarily who you invite, but who you're related to. Gosh dang. Anyways, guys, that concludes our stories of appalling behavior and traumatic weddings. If you guys have any recent, marriages that you've witnessed that are quite chaotic, feel free to drop them down below because I'm quite enjoying them and I love reading them. And as always, thanks for hanging out with me, and we will see you in the next one.